The Minister of Education prefers to ignore another scandal, this time linked to KIMEP, a leading university of the country. At the Friday's briefing in Almaty, the minister chose to speak about fighting corruption within the higher education system and focused at its global domination. These talks, however, were spoiled by questions from journalists.
The Education Minister said at Friday's briefing in Almaty that KIMEP holds no international accreditation and the ministry will not interfere in the scandal linked to Kazakh Institute of Management, Economic and Strategic Research.
The issues have nothing to do with the quality of education and rather with some subjective moments that the university's leadership should deal with on their own.
The University's Parents Association stated on May 17th that the popular institution has no international accreditation, while the reputation of some professors is quite questionable.
KIMEP has hired a person convicted by the American court for pedophilia.
The advocate of student rights, Bakhtirjan Torigozhina, believes she knows why the leading institution found itself in the center of the scandal. Allegedly, the president and major shareholder of KIMEP, Chan Yangbang, is trying to sell his part in the university, while the unknown challenger is knocking down the price. This person seems to be powerful enough to ensure the non-interference of educational ministry.
There is information that Bang is selling his shares and it looks like he's at a very high price. The interested party is knocking this price down through smear campaigns. Quite obviously, this has nothing to do with the concern for students' rights. Instead, there are just some behind-the-scene games.
According to newspaper Vzгляд, the president's son-in-law Timur Kulibayev is interested in the university. Torigozhina says that 40% of this institution's share belong to state, thus the creation of new Nazarbayev University in Astana led to the redirection of state subsidies to the capital, subsequently making KIMEP unprofitable. Representatives of the institution do not comment on the situation, while the education minister only adds more confusion with his answers about the influence of the state on the current processes.
Now to financial news. The World Bank intends to give a $1 billion loan to Kazakhstan. The analysts, however, warn that the use of external borrowing to tackle the fiscal deficit could adversely affect the domestic economy.
Saxo Bank presented its forecast for the development of the global economy at the Almaty conference. The crisis is still here, and some foreign industry analyst David Karzbal advises government to reduce dependence on the debt markets. In the case of Kazakhstan, the experts propose to reduce the share of public expenditures to solve both problems of the budget deficit and inflation.
That can be solved with a loan from the IMF, and in some cases that would make sense. But ultimately, the best thing you can do is to cut the budget deficit and make sure that the government is not dependent on foreign liquidity.
Kazakh government sees foreign loans as a magical cure-all. In addition to the World Bank credit, the authorities plan to issue euro bonds and also attract Islamic capital. All proceeds will be used to cover the budget deficit, which reached $5 billion in 2010. Economist Makhbat Spanov does not support the official's position.
Funds to cover the budget deficit could be found on the domestic market. The government repeatedly talked about the free liquidity. However, analysts are skeptical about government bonds being in demand among the investors. Last year, their yield has dropped considerably. Taking advantage of the market condition, the state issued too many securities. It is a question of profitability. Everyone wants to make money, and if there was more inflation, there would be more interest from institutional and individual market participants.
Experts concluded that the best option is to reduce some of the state expenditures, although the healthcare and education should not suffer as a result. The state can safely abandon its obsession with the accelerated industrial and innovation development. It is doubtful that plants and factories will appear in Kazakhstan within the next few years, and most of the over-promoted projects approved earlier have also produced no results.
A roundtable devoted to the development of Kazakh financial sector in the post-crisis period was held on Friday in Almaty. The participants even gave the impression that the devastating crisis that is still affecting European countries and the United States has been successfully tackled by Kazakhstan, and the country's economy received almost no harm.
Only banking system felt the impact of the crisis in Kazakhstan, but even this does not discourage experts. In their opinion, the situation helped to identify the weaknesses of the financial institutions. They are not even doubted by the main disadvantage of Kazakh banks, their unwillingness to invest into domestic economy, preferring neighboring China and Russia.
We focused on the foreign investments and loans abusing the opportunity. Meanwhile, our banks distributed these funds as mortgages and credits to developers, just like it happened in the US.
In his last address to the nation, the president outlined the concept of definite solution to the crisis. Now economists are busy thinking of what to do with this idea. They cannot go against the highest will, thus there's nothing left to do but indulge their recondite reasoning.
There is an opinion that the economic crisis can develop in the form of the letter Y or the letter V, like an arrow, or even as the letter W with the beginning and recession. The question remains open: where is the recovery?
There are 39 banks in Kazakhstan, which is quite a competitive environment. All of them, however, exist exclusively on the state subsidies, which make them dependent. At the same time, bankers cannot cope with the budget allocated from the state treasury. $410 million were lost during the previous year alone, and this number will likely to grow in 2010. Nevertheless, bankers seem to believe that they can continue using the state funding indefinitely.
The opening of the memorial to Khans Kirey and Zhenybek was postponed on Friday as it was revealed that the monument was simply not ready. Here is the rest of the story.
The opening of the monument to the founders of Kazakh Khanate, Kirey and Zhenybek, was scheduled to take place at noon in the square next to Astana's museum of the first president. Nursultan Nazarbayev was to personally cut the ribbon. The founders, however, are nowhere to be found. Only the pedestal and letters remain in place. It was reported on Friday that the monument is located in village Pramyshlenny on the outskirts of Astana. Journalists were shocked upon arriving at the site that the monument was in a very poor condition, definitely not ready for the solemn opening, and even required major modifications. According to Murat Mansurov, the person in charge of the project, there were no specific deadlines, and the initial goal was to make the monument of the best possible quality. At the last moment, though, it turned out that there is a need for some structural reinforcements.
When we were preparing the monument for the transportation on Thursday, we realized that some structural reinforcement is needed. So we let the organizers know about it, and now we work to solve the issue.
This is when journalists learned that these Kirey and Zhenybek were created from scratch, although previously officials talked about the restoration of old monuments. No one even knows what happened to it.
We expect to finish the reinforcement works in about 3 days. If members of the working and state commissions will give their positive conclusion on Sunday, we will prepare the monument for the transportation.
After that, another few days will be needed to set the monument in place. Specialists, however, are sure that the tremendous amount of work like this cannot be done in just 3 days. At least a couple of weeks are needed to finish the monument. Nevertheless, workers believe that they will be done in time and the new memorial will stand for centuries. Although it is very hard to believe their promises while looking at the long-suffering Kirey and Zhenybek.
These were all the latest updates from Kazakhstan. Have a great weekend. Goodbye.